Voting is a civic duty. Let's register on the electoral list. This is a message from Equinoxe Television.
Hi there to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Welcome to this edition of the news on Equinoxe Television. I'm Majestaris. This evening, road accidents continue in some cities in Cameroon, few weeks to back to school. Today in Buya in the southwest region, still around OIC, where another road accident happened some time ago. At least one person was killed in a fatal road accident today that was early in the morning. It happened after a heavy-duty truck crushed a township taxi. And also over 55 million francs CFA has been used for the projection of a documentary on President Buya. Economists think those millions could be used or be channeled to take care of the several social issues the country lacks at the moment. You will listen to some of those economists in this edition of the news, so stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for the confidence. We begin with this human interest story. Two suspected armed robbers are currently in the dragnet of security forces of the Bepanda Territorial Gendarmerie Brigade. According to investigations, the suspects recently assassinated or killed a 30-year-old boy at the Axelu Bepanda neighborhood in the Douala 5 subdivision. Lucy Liengo is here, recounts what happened.
The tragic assassination of a young man in his 30s occurred on Sunday, August 4th, around 3 a.m. in the Axelu Bepanda neighborhood, Douala 5 subdivision. The victim was returning home when a gang of alleged bandits attacked him with a dagger. The suspect seized his phone, money, and stabbed him 4 times before abandoning him in his own pool of blood. In excruciating pain, his family, headed by his elder brother, reported the case to the National Gendarmerie. Investigations were launched by the commander of the Littoral Gendarmerie Legion. We were informed by a member of the family. We launched investigations, and implementing our know-how, we were able to arrest the main suspects. After a series of operations carried out, the suspected armed robbers were apprehended. We laid hands on them in a motel located in Bepanda and 2000. They were in hiding. It should be noted that the main suspect, the chief of the gang who stabbed the young man, is a native of the neighborhood. The brothers of the deceased say the arrest of the suspect is somehow a relief, though their wish is for justice to take its course. I'm happy because finally security forces were able to apprehend the murderers of my kid brother. I want justice to take its course because he is a criminal and he has a wicked character. The commander of the Territorial Gendarmerie Brigade of Bepanda calls on the population not to relent efforts, but should continue to denounce the atrocities carried out by the thieves so that they will be arrested. This will help reduce the high rates of insecurity in Axelu Bepanda.
And we told you in the headlines, 2 persons have lost their lives in a fatal road accident which occurred today in Buya. It involved a truck and a taxi. According to eyewitness accounts, the truck lost control and crushed the taxi, and the driver died on the spot. Meanwhile, the passenger died few hours in the hospital in Buya. Mala Glory now takes us to Buya.
A taxi damaged beyond repair. This is as a result of an accident that occurred this Wednesday at Moliko in Buya, southwest region. The accident involved a heavy-duty truck that lost control and, according to witnesses, was on high speed. For this reason, the truck crushed the taxi on its way and landed on the wall of a building.
You see it coming from down with a serious speed because he has lost the brake, and then it came down. It just came down. It came. I was trying to dodge. It just the one who started my car like this just went down there before causing those atrocities.
The driver to the taxi, whose name we got as Elvis Ewong, died on the spot, while his passenger Bertrand died hours later in a health unit where he was transported for treatment. Witnesses blame the accident on mechanical failure. Meantime, the driver to the truck, who sustained severe injuries, is under intense medical treatment at the health unit in Buya. While investigations have been opened to determine the real cause of the accident.
In other news, August 21, 1986 to August 21, 2024, it is exactly 38 years since the Lake Nyos disaster in the Menchum division of the Northwest region took away the lives of over 1,700 people living around the lake. As the victims who survived it remember the horrible incident of August 21, 1986, they say the government hasn't kept to its promises which they made to them, amongst which was the provision of social amenities. In the report which comes up next, our reporter Smaljikan Gabriel takes us to the settlement site of the Yemge people, victims of the Lake Nyos disaster.
At the settlement site of Yemge, houses are almost falling off. The water that was given to them since 1986, when the Lake Nyos incident occurred, is no longer useful. The inhabitants prefer to leave this planet, which is filled with problems. Since we suffered from the disaster, we have been in hell. If there is a means for us to die, we could have preferred that. Cows eat our crops. The water that the government gave us is bad. Our houses are all bad. Even the one I'm inside will soon fall. Educational wise, my grandchild, who was supposed to be in Form 5, is still in Form 1 because of no schools. Apart from the problem of water, destruction caused by cattle, health is another key problem disturbing the Lake Nyos victims of Yemge. We had a hospital that was constructed for us, but no doctors. When it comes to the worst, the person is transferred to whom a simple headache here costs you 10,000 francs CFA to get a paracetamol. The ongoing Anglophone crisis has added to the already existing injury. The Anglophone crisis has come to add up to our sufferings because at night, just the sound of a dog, we start running carelessly for our safety. 38 years on since the Lake Nyos incident, a ritual was done by the Fon of Nyos at Lake Nyos. It's been 70 years since this ritual was done by the late Fon. The first thing everyone should know is we are here to seek for blessings from our ancestors. It implies we have to forget about the ugly past that happened here. The victims are still asking the government to keep to their numerous promises which were made during the crisis but haven't been fulfilled till date.
One of the survivors will be our guest tonight. The internal debts of Cameroon have continued increasing over the years in hundreds of thousands of billions of francs CFA. The last audit carried out by the Ministry of Finance reveals a debt level of close to 700 billion francs CFA. Babila Jonathan talks to an economist who analyzes the situation in the report which comes up next.
Cameroon's internal debt arrears over the period running from the year 2000 to 2019 amounts to 671.7 billion francs CFA. This is what the results of the census and audit operation of the floating debt of the state revealed. It was launched at the end of 2020 by the Ministry of Finance. according to the distribution made in an official press release signed by the Minister of Finance, Louis-Paul Mutazi, August 16, 2024. The highest amounts are owed by the central administration, 461.5 billion francs CFA, and public institutions and enterprises, 194.4 billion francs CFA.
It is a debt that is due already, so the government has to pay. Definitely. When we talk about the internal debt of Cameroon, it's about 4,000 billion already. So it's just a little portion of the debt of Cameroon that actually is going to be paid.
Apart from tax, customs and commercial debts, rental debts are still being examined. The Minister of Finance says, given their specificity, academic debts, rental debt, social debt and compensation will be covered by the state budget in the 2024 financial year. Current stock of salary debt will be cleared in 2 years from 2024.
Within these 2 years, the Minister of Finance will pay within these 2 years all the amount of 671,000 to those who actually supply to the government or constructed for the account of the government.
With the exception of that of teachers, which will be settled by the end of 2024, commercial debt is subject to shared management between the state and the debtor institutions over 3 years starting this year. The ministerial release states that the state will support debtor entities by taking charge of the entire tax debt over 7 years starting from 2024.
We stay with you, Babila Chandasan. You tell us that poor working conditions continue to provoke social tension across Africa. Workers are frequently on the streets in different parts of the continent protesting against maltreatment by employers and demanding for the respect of their rights that are often violated. Trade unionists are stepping up efforts to improve working conditions across the continent. It is a purpose of the 26th meeting of the Africa Executive Committee taking place here in Douala.
As the African continent work in poor and precarious conditions, the International Labour Organization estimates that across a sample of 24 African countries, 49% of working young people live on less than 500 francs CFA a day, and 73% live on less than 1,000 francs CFA per day.
One of the key challenges that workers face is precariousness of their jobs, meaning that workers don't have full-time contracts anymore. They can be hired and fired at a very easily way to do this, and that is why in many instances you see workers on the street.
Women are disproportionately affected by these precarious employments. This is compounded by growing health risk associated with poor working conditions.
Racial exploitation, sexual exploitation, violence against women, because that is also part of the workplace.
Trade union leaders across the continent are pressing for solutions and decent work. It is the subject of discussion in the 26th meeting of the Africa Executive Committee in Douala.
At a Africa level, we are engaging with the ITUC Africa at the policy level, challenging governments at the ILO to ensure that governments begin to respect and implement the ILO conventions.
As UNI, we are also campaigning for countries to adopt an international labour organization, that is the ILO conventions. We take, for example, Convention 190 that talks about the prevention and elimination of harassment at the workplace.
The organization is working with its affiliates from north to south, east to west of the continent to enhance work conditions across Africa.
In less than 3 weeks, pupils and students will resume the academic year 2024-2025 that would be on September 9, ensuring a hitch-free start of the academic year in primary schools in the littoral region was the objective of a meeting grouping primary school teachers addressing the stakeholders, the regional delegates for basic education urged teachers to stay focused as they exercise their duties, while warning them on the sanctions awaiting recalcitrant teachers. Immaculate Fogwe has the details.
Education stakeholders of the Ministry of Basic Education dotting their I's and cutting their T's as they prepare for the official kickstart of the 2024-2025 academic year. Gathered in the city of Douala, the teachers are being urged to answer present at their respective schools on day one of school resumption. We will ensure that all teachers answer present in their respective schools. Those who will be absent will be sanctioned. We have also put in place strategies that will enable us to fight corruption in school milieux. The regional delegate for basic education equally urged parents to be conscious while choosing schools in order not to enroll their children in clandestine schools.
The instruction you receive from the Minister of Basic Education during the national sectoral meeting we attend. And we receive from the Minister the instruction to carry on very well all the activity we program for the well opens for the school resume on the 9th September 2024.
The 2024-2025 academic year officially begins on September 9th. Both teachers and parents are called upon to give in their possible best in order to guarantee a hitch-free academic year.
Thanks, Immaculate. Sad reports brings us to the end of the first part. The news talking point is up next. Stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. We are going back to the Nyos disaster which happened some 38 years ago. And our guest tonight is one of the survivors, Say Andrew. Thank you so much, Mr. Say, for accepting to talk to us on Equinoxe Television tonight. Like I mentioned, you're one of the survivors of the Nyos disaster, which killed over 2,000 people, infected several others, and also killed a huge quantity of livestock. You were just 12 years old when it happened. You were in the mentioned division. You were staying not far away from the lake. Can you tell us what really happened, what you experienced?
Thank you, madam, for bringing me to Equinoxe Television to talk about the famous Nyos disaster. To go straight to your question, I was just 12 and had just finished my primary school. So on that famous day, as God will put his things, I left Cha, one of the localities that was affected by the disaster, for whom just to return the next day and saw what happened. So actually, when it happened at about 11 o'clock at night, I was not there. From the stories that we heard the next morning, the people who were close to the lake, they said they heard a loud noise. And that loud noise was the explosion of the gas in the lake. And so the outlet of that lake carried the poisonous substance from the lake through the valleys to the other neighboring communities of Cha and the valley of Nyos and Subum, and that is how the people there died. When I left home and was coming, just as I arrived the Cha valley, I saw corpses covered with mats beside the road. I did not know what was happening until I got to our own house, where my mother herself was affected. That is how we started finding out what happened. And we realized that many people were dead at the time. We were just very confused. In the evening, one of the elites who was walking out of the community came back that evening and proposed that we should escape to Wum, the divisional headquarters. So we trekked overnight and we reached Wum. We're reaching Kumfutu at about 5 a.m. The people who were affected, some of those very old people were very tired. We had to rest there for about an hour. We continued to Jouées village. When we arrived where we discovered that the divisional authorities had blocked the road to Nyos. There were gendarmes there. They received us, took us to one compound and kept us there. We were about the first people to arrive at the general hospital in Wum. Before we arrived home, there were Israeli doctors in Wum, there were Israeli soldiers with drugs to cater for us.
Mr. C. Andrew, from the hospital, after most of you were treated, you were taken to resettlement camps with several promises made from the government. 38 years later on, what about those promises?
Yeah, from the general hospital in Wum, we were taken to St. Martin's Catholic Mission in Wum, where we stayed for some time, and then time came for the resettlement. There were so many people who were passing around and campaigning that we should come to their communities and settle there. Those of us who came from Cha is a community, is a quarter in Fungom village. So the founder of Fungom village passed around and told us that we were his people from his village and we are not going anywhere, that he would take us back to Fungom and settle us. So when the time came, I want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Fayengo Francis, who was the divisional officer, the senior divisional officer of Menchum at the time, and Reverend Father Tenhon, who worked tirelessly to see that we were resettled. Getting back to the issue of the promises that were made, I would like to say here that life in those communities has not been easy, because we were removed from our community to a community where we were not very used to, with a lot of crisis, farmer grazier problems, you had land problems, and we were like the sacrificial lambs. Each time there was a problem, we were the targeted ones. And so life in these communities has not been good. I will start from the point of education. After the disaster, the government initiated a Nyos scholarship program that lasted only for 2 years. So many of us dropped out of school. I was just going to Form 1 at the time. Many of us dropped out of school. Until today, many of our children are not going to school because of lack of means by the parents back there, who are mostly persistent farmers. When they cultivate their crops, you see, with the persistent farmer grazier conflicts that we have there, most of these crops end up in the stomach of cows, and it's very difficult for these parents back home there to be able to send their children to school.
Yes, Mr. Andrew, you just spoke about education. We can imagine that other social issues are still problematic in those resettlement camps. Now, what about your village, the village you left? Is there life around Lake Nyos now, and also the resettlement camp? Because you gave us also some surplus information that you've been in Douala just for some few years. You spent your entire life in those resettlement camp in the northwest region. From the information you get from those who are still there, how is life at the camp and also around the Lake Nyos where the disaster happened?
Yes, madam. Let me correct something before I continue. It's not like I'm living. I'm here because of the ongoing socio-political crisis in the northwest and southwest. I lived all my life in the Yemye resettlement camp in Fungom village, which is one of the 7 camps that we constructed during the resettlement program. Resettlement in quotes. Yes, because to me, resettlement means that you evacuate somebody from the danger zone, you bring him to a safer environment, you keep him there, and then you provide for him those amenities that can keep life moving. But it's like the resettlement project was just a method to keep the people away, to keep the survivors of Nyos away, and then because there's nothing moving, there is nothing that is moving there. Life is very bad. If I could bring pictures here, you'll be surprised to see that there are people who live there in houses that one of the walls, because one of the walls have broken down, because these houses were hurriedly constructed 38 years ago. Today, they should be very, very old, and they will not be able to keep the number of people in that family because the population is increasing, but the houses are not increasing. And so the situation of the housing situation in Yemi is really dangerous. And I believe that is what is happening in all the other 7 camps. Around the lake, there is life. There are people who came and inhabited our land when we left. And 38 years after, the government is still saying that they are going to resettle us. I begin to wonder, where would those people who are already living there, who are still Cameroonians too, I begin to ask myself, where are they going to go to if government was to resettle us now?
Just like you mentioned, say, Andrew, you ran for your life. That was when you were just 12 years old, and you have been away for like almost your entire life. If you have to go back to the village, like you just mentioned, that some people are already staying around there, will you be able to recognize the place again? And would you really want to go back and stay in your village after being away for almost all your life?
Absolutely. I will recognize every place, because within these 28 years, we have been passing around. There are moments we just go to the lake for excursions until the outbreak of the socio-political crisis we have in the Northwest and Southwest. I've been here for about 6 years now in Douala because I could not bear it. So I decided to leave and come down here.
Thank you, Mr. C. Andrew. But before we part company, what last words do you have in relation to those of you who are survivors of the Lake Nyos disaster and you're still in need of some social amenities?
I don't really have anything out of what the government had proposed. I attended more than 3 seminars organized by the Ministry of Territorial Administration in respect to the Lake Nyos resettlement. And they have a very nice plan for Lake Nyos disaster survivors. But the question is, when shall this project be realized? Because if after 38 years they are still talking about resettlement, the government is still talking about resettlement, when shall we go back? Imagine that I've been living in the new community where we were taken to. I've been living there for 38 years. I left my community when I was only 12. Today I've been living in this other community for 38 years, and they have to take me back to that community. It means that throughout my life, I'm about 50 now. It means that throughout my life, I will be wandering from one community to the other. And so the government has a very good plan. My appeal to the government is that they should make this plan realistic. And secondly, to the NGOs, and thirdly to people of goodwill, that the conditions of the Lake Nyos survivors now is worse than it was in 1986. And so if anybody has anything to offer, when I look at the number of children who do not go to school, I bleed. Because there's a whole generation that's going for nothing. We are talking about 38 years. Imagine that children have not been going to school for 38 years. So if there is anything anybody can do to help the Lake Nyos survivors, this is the time.
Thank you very much, say Andrew, and courage to you and also to all the survivors of the Lake Nyos disaster. Viewers, thank you so much for being with us. Don't go away, our programs continue. Equinoxe live from Yaoundé with Giz will go in about 30 minutes, and the news in the French language with Julien Beth beside that would be at 8 p.m. Stay with us on Equinoxe Television. Bye-bye for now.